Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, May 19th, 2022. Time for figuring out what to do for another show. Luckily, we have Greg Dworkin with us today. As I said, I got distracted yesterday. Busy presidenting and taking care of all the board meeting details yesterday. That ate up the bulk of the evening. And then, I was pretty much brain dead after that. I guess you could argue that that was happening during the meeting as well. And then, as I said in the Morning Post today, there was a Downton Abbey marathon of some kind on TV. I happened to wander by and see that, and it reminded me of the good old days, back before Madison Cawthorn was Madison Cawthorn, when we had Aaron Schock to deal with. Does everybody remember Aaron? Does anybody remember Aaron Schock? He was actually, I thought, oh, what a great parallel. They were both only in office for one term and then chucked out as, dangerously out of touch with everything. Reality, their constituency, etc. And I looked it up just to be sure about everything. And did I have the right guy's name? And did he spell it this way or that way? And I realized Aaron Schock was elected to 3 terms in office, in federal office, and had been a state representative beforehand. But, also very young, broke all sorts of records. I believe he was the first member of Congress born in the 80s and was, at the time, the youngest one elected and had been the youngest one elected to the state legislature as well. Very similar in that respect to Madison Cawthorn. And just basically, they both came to office with the same weird idea that you didn't actually have to do anything. You could just run around doing memes and making speeches and being strident about things and sending out selfies of yourself doing various things, whether it's punching trees or traveling to ritzy locations and taking selfies of yourself in weird get-ups. They were very similar in that respect. And I guess we'll see what the future holds for these two idiots. I don't even know what Aaron Schock is doing now. I think I went to look to see whether he had picked up a lobbying job or something like that. I don't know. Just sort of interesting. Thought I would check it out, but I didn't learn anything about that. But I did remind myself of the existence of Aaron Schock, and that was kind of worth it all by itself. You remember why I connected him with Downton Abbey? I don't know if everyone remembers that. He was the guy who, I don't know how much he spent on it, but he used his official office funds for it, to redecorate his congressional office in a sort of Downton Abbey style theme, which is a little odd because Downton Abbey was a house and this is an office, and a small office at that, as opposed to a gigantic mansion from another century and whatever. But okay, he was really, I guess, enamored with the show and paid an awful lot of money to have the place redecorated and just, I don't know. There, among other things, he was just, minor scandal plagued because he was a young guy and he kept shooting himself in the foot / stepping on all the rakes, whichever your metaphor is that you prefer, and then he was gone. And then he came back. He was reincarnated as Madison Cawthorn, and now Madison Cawthorn is gone. Okay. I just wanted to revel in that for one more day. Bill in Portland, Maine has other things for us to revel in as well. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live. Kagro X, me, David Waldman, divisively hurt Elon Musk's feelings. I did that this morning. And now we can't have any more Zoom Zoom rockets or Zoom Zoom cars. Thanks a lot. That's too bad. Zoom Zoom at 30 miles an hour, single file in a tunnel. That's his great vision for it. The ones he's not launching into space, anyway. I don't know. He said something yesterday. I don't take it too seriously, but I think he was declaring his interest in voting for Republicans this time around. He claims never to have voted for a Republican before, but he's going to do it now because something, Democrats, unions, etc. And, he's got a company, so he hates unions. And it wasn't particularly well thought out and doesn't really deserve a great deal of attention. But I thought it made an interesting contrast with, like, all the rest of the things that Republicans are doing these days, including last night voting en masse against a Democratic proposal in the House to appropriate some $28 million to address, in some fashion, the baby formula shortage here in the country. And the screenshot that tells it all that somebody grabbed off of, I guess probably off of their TV from C-SPAN. Final vote count, although I believe they missed, I believe they said, oh no, that's right. That was the subsequent vote that they missed out on one extra vote. But 231 in favor, 192 opposed on, as they describe on the chyron on the screen, $28 million for baby formula shortage, 219 yay votes from Democrats, just 12 from Republicans, no nay votes from Democrats, 192 nay votes from Republicans, so they get to explain that one today. And, you know, good suggestion made by everyone's good Twitter friend, that guy, who's yeah, it's a very clever thing. Every time I say that guy, and you got to explain that's his name on Twitter, but just pointing out that that should anyway, be the Democrats' closer commercial for the fall elections. Just 30 seconds of that footage. It would be interesting, you know how the C-SPAN footage goes, of people milling about, making murmuring noises while the vote count stays up there, and displays everything. That's okay, Greg. We'll live through it. But thank you. But anyway, they could run 30 seconds of just that up on the screen. It says $28 million for baby formula shortage, and there's like no Republican votes for it. That kind of explains everything. Unfortunately, I think the rules actually are that you can't use floor footage for a campaign commercial. I guess if you did that, there would be nobody voting for Republicans. So we can't have that happening. Anyway, I don't think Elon Musk is going to be too hurt about it, but just pointing out that, among other things that are crazy and happening all over the place right now, makes it awfully difficult to stand there and look serious when you say, yeah, I'm going to vote for Republicans. Greg Dworkin is here and has all things, unfortunate timing of the phone ringing, but here with all the other stories to make Republicans look ridiculous, or your choice to vote for them look ridiculous if you were to do the same as Elon Musk. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm fine. You know, I think it was great that Elon Musk was pretty honest about what's going on. He hates unions and he hates civil rights.
I mean, all right. That's
because the class action suit happens to be, black employees of Tesla suing him over civil rights issues.
Darn it. I have to have a fair working environment. I hate that. We have to put a stop to it.
I hate paying people, and I hate when they complain about it. I mean, basically, that's, so I'm voting Republican because they don't even feed babies.
Yeah, that's basically it. That, and by the way, a revival of, they are still telling their people that, yes, Democrats are putting cat litter boxes in the school bathrooms in case anybody identifies as a cat. It's true. It's still like 3 months now. People have been whispering that at school board meetings, and I guess the latest one cropped up in Maine. So, Bill, if you'll head over to Bangor and knock those dummies' coconuts together and straighten them out, we'd appreciate it. I'm sorry that has to come up again, but we are there. We live in that world.
The bumper sticker is just so clear. Republicans, they won't even feed babies.
Yeah,
that's it. That's your fall campaign.
Yeah, there's all sorts of pictures. Everybody's been running those. Look at the empty shelves of baby formula. All right, well, here's some money to help alleviate the crisis. No.
Well, you have to run those side by side.
Yeah.
A picture of empty. Shelves, and then Republicans not voting to feed babies. I mean, there
was an additional vote. I did see one of the congressional reporters covering yesterday. They they just sent around a picture of their handwritten notes on who voted against it. There was another vote.
Tell me this if you're explaining your losing story.
Yeah. What was it? They were another thing where, oh yes, that's right. An extension of the current emergency rules for WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children Feeding Program, food stamps, essentially. That I guess during the pandemic, they amended the rules somewhat with respect to baby formula. WIC would only pay for certain brands, the lower cost brands.
And certain sizes, too.
Yeah,
it wasn't
okay.
just brands.
That's right. Okay, thank you. You're aware of the story. Because I'm not, because I was watching TV and
I'm
falling
aware
asleep.
of what WIC
But you
does.
got the idea. All right. Well, they were paying for baby formula. And during the pandemic, when certain sizes and formulas, et cetera, became a little bit more difficult to get, but just to basically make sure everyone got fed, during the pandemic, they waived most of those restrictions. You can get the baby formula that's available. Go ahead, make sure your kids have something to eat. We have extended it. The pandemic is, of course, extended as well. We didn't vote for that, but we're extending that rule, especially now in light of the shortage, where the approved versions of the formula are out of stock. You should be able to get what you can get, and we'll cover it. 414 votes in favor of extending that, 9 votes against, and all the crazy, lunatic, regular suspects. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Trader Green, Paul Gosar, Louis Gohmert, Andy Biggs, all of these people, according to this handwritten note from the reporter, voted against this thing. And, I mean, they just stand in opposition to everything about American society at this point. The culture war for them is anything that works has to be destroyed.
Well, since we're on this topic,
yes,
let me do a couple of things. First of all, let me send you a tweet with the screenshot so you have a credit for it if and when you need it. It's from a sin. This is a story that's in the Bulwark, which is unfortunately behind a paywall. But there's a couple of good Bulwark stories today. This one is, will the national GOP go the way of the California GOP? Okay. 6 years of lying and conspiracy theories are threatening the Republican suburban rural electoral coalition across the country. Basically, rurals love it and the suburbanites hate it.
Yes.
So if you don't have the opportunity to read the article because it's behind the paywall, that's basically what's going on. So Senate seats and state governorships accountable to more diverse electorates where the Republican unreality is more dilute are another matter. It's in these statewide races we can begin to see how the GOP in the swing states is tracing the party's trajectory in the state that still teaches us everything about the future, and that's California.
Okay.
So Michael Barone, who's an ultra-conservative, wrote an essay about California's unraveling society, economy, and politics, none of which, of course, is true. Barone's piece walked a well-marked trail of conservative commentary about California, the economic and social arteries of a state which was once a global champion for individual freedom and the miracles of modern capitalism, the state that gave us Ronald Reagan, have grown hard and sluggish due to an uninterrupted diet of political and cultural progressivism, says Barone. So far, sad but true, says this conservative writer. Again, you always have to throw bones to your audience. Where I differed with Barone was on the question of whether California still influenced national trends or not. He thinks it doesn't. I think it's a question of what kind of influence. And on this question, the decline of conservative politics in the Golden States very much the model for the decline of Republican politics nationally. The parallels are almost too on the nose. Act 1, the Trump before Trump, and that's Pete Wilson, and of course Prop 187, which was a conserving public resources for citizens, California first, in other words,
yes.
and otherwise demagnetizing California as a destination for dangerous and violent illegal immigrants. It passed by a wide margin, and it was the end of the Republican Party in California. So that happened, and that's covered in the article. Act 3, tragedy is farce, Donald Trump's candidacy. And then Act 4, the bill comes due. That's the interesting part. The Trump presidency may have been a failure, but Trumpism has proven to have real and enduring appeal. And let's look at what's going on in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes.
So it isn't just Pennsylvania where the political psychodrama is playing out in plain view. There's Herschel Walker, who's a Russian roulette playing GOP nominee, likely, to run against Raphael Warnock. Mm-hmm. And California, here we come. Because ultimately it's a downward spiral, and it's not sustainable. The problem is how much pain you have to go through between now and then for the non-sustainable part.
Well, I hope it's a downward spiral. It should be. Of course, you can always change the rules along the way. I did have one thing. I'll tease it. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But our good friend Travis sends us news from Colorado that one Colorado Republican candidate for governor, realizing that Colorado had only elected one Republican governor in the last 50 years or so, has a new proposal which is stop counting all votes equally and instead heavily weight rural voters versus big city pace picante sauce rejecting slickers. They should only have a fraction of a vote compared to everybody else. He wants to
3/5.
Well, less, but that's a good thought. Certainly, he wants to take the fantastic and well-functioning electoral college rules and apply them to the states, particularly his own state, Colorado, so that rural voters get electoral votes to play with rather than actual votes, and then can reverse the outcome of all the elections.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
Interestingly, also, I'm going to move from Colorado to Buffalo.
All right.
But not the Buffalo you think. I will say, when I turned on the telly this morning and turned on cable, at the top of the hour were lots of Buffalo stories.
Yes.
Because still a lot of stuff's coming out. Now it's the human interest stuff. The 911 operator who got mad when somebody was whispering. They were whispering because the gunman was right next to them.
Right.
So they hung up on him. That's not good. He's going to be arraigned in court today. I'm doing my best not to even repeat his name.
Okay.
That's the thing with these folks. It isn't because I can't pronounce it. It's because, he doesn't deserve it.
You don't want to. Right.
But, this Buffalo story is actually not that.
All right.
It's a little different. It's a twist on things. And this goes back to May of 2022. This is a New York Times story. And it's about the fight over who should be governor.
Is this last year, 2021?
2022, May 11th, 2022.
So that's, okay. This goes back to May 11th then. All right. Yeah. I got you. I thought
so it's not today. It's just a few days ago.
Yeah, all right. No problem.
And the problem is that Kathy Hochul, who is the governor because Andrew Cuomo resigned, is running and will undoubtedly get the Democratic nomination and probably win the election.
Okay.
But there's a conservative who, of course, paints himself as a moderate from Long Island, from Nassau County, named Tom Suozzi, who's running against her.
Suozzi. Not Nazi, Suozzi.
Suozzi, Tom Suozzi.
Okay. All right, Tom.
And the article is, top Democrats want Tom Suozzi out of governor's race. He's still running. In the New York Democratic primary, Tom Suozzi is fighting Governor Kathy Hochul for moderate voters with a focus on fighting crime and cutting taxes. So if he sounds like Kurt Schrader or he sounds like a conservative, he is. He's run before in state politics and generally lost. Elliot Spitzer, former governor, beat him. He's pretty decent in terms of some issues. For example, the NRA gives him an F. He's pro-labor.
Right.
It's
I don't
New
give
York.
an F, but all right.
So even the conservatives in New York are reasonably decent. But he has an incredible ego, and he doesn't really care if he wrecks the party. And that's why the Democrats in New York were not happy with him running. And I say this is all the way back on May 11th because their disappointment in him, shall we say, predates the Buffalo shooting. Now, Hochul's from the Buffalo area. So as part of his campaign, Tom Suozzi has been blasting her with all things Buffalo. Like Buffalo's bad, your support for Buffalo is bad, you want to give a whole lot of money to build a new football stadium in Buffalo, and it's stealing the taxpayers' money, and you shouldn't be so Buffalo, and this, that, and everything else.
And now, Buffalo, though, part of the state that's voting for this governor?
Supposedly.
Yeah.
So then the Buffalo massacre happens.
Have 0 votes there. Yes.
And as this article from Spectrum Local News says, the leader of the New York State Democratic Party and other advocates are slamming gubernatorial candidate Tom Suozzi after he blamed Hochul and tied long-term effects of the state's cashless bail policy for Saturday's racially motivated shooting. Swazi, a Long Island Democrat, said on Wednesday the Western New York massacre came on the heels of insufficient state leadership and changes to state criminal justice policies, which of course nonsense. And when asked what legislative loopholes he would address, Swazi named New York's bail reform law. And it's related to gun laws, but the major issue is bail reform because basically he goes on to say Hochul's soft on crime.
The kid was never in jail.
Well, it has nothing to do with anything.
Right. And
But he's running on a on tough on crime thing.
Correct.
New York State Democratic Chairman Jay Jacobs on Wednesday blasted Swazi for the inaccuracy of his statements in inappropriately politicizing Saturday's tragedy. That's his own party. For Tom Swazi to politicize this weekend's racist terrorist attack by blaming the governor demonstrates both how desperate his campaign is and how shockingly offensive his judgment has become. And basically calls him an opportunist and doesn't use the term dirtbag, but comes pretty close, in terms of the description there.
All right.
So, all politics is local, and New York politics can be fairly vicious. But the point is these soft on crime things that people use are completely and totally opportunistic just about always. And the fact that Kathy Hochul is a woman and he thinks he can get away with accusing her of being soft on crime is a lot based on who she is. And one of the points I'm going to make later about John Fetterman, who's 6'9", and I don't know how much he weighs, but some of the articles talking about his size, he's a very large man, talk about the fact that he lost 150 pounds. He lost more than a lot of people actually weigh.
Yeah, right.
So he's a big guy.
Yes.
Right? And the point is, it's very difficult for Republicans to point soft on crime stuff on Fetterman when, first of all, he's large, and second of all, a prior scandal in a prior part of his life was pointing a rifle at a jogger.
Yes.
Who happened to be black.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. But
the
the rifle
it's very
is the
difficult
problem.
to make
Jeez.
soft on crime stick on this guy.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to see as much as you would think.
Even though for a while he was soft.
But, it's just, you pick who you choose to throw this at.
Yes.
Right? If you're running against somebody who looks like Pee Wee Herman, you're going to do that. If you're running against a woman, you might do that. If you're running against Margaret Thatcher, you're not. If you're running against Fetterman, it's not going to work. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, right. You're standing there on the debate stage. It's a thing
So
Fetterman
I'll
has
come over
in
here
his,
and tell me that to my
right.
face.
Exactly. He has that in his favor, and others don't. But even so, it's just a weird connection to make. It doesn't make any particular sense. They don't
it's just,
really
I'm
care
running,
whether it does.
I'm running soft. This is a total a great example of how politics goes bad when you don't have anything behind it. This is like my talking points say I'm supposed to run soft on crime, so let me pick something and just do it.
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
You can imagine him having like the Mitt Romney Benghazi smile when he hears about the Buffalo shooting. Oh, I'm going to use this against Hochul in my race. Like, yeah, you're really not clear on the whole thing about what New York wants or normal people would vote for, etc. That's odd. I mean, it was probably a long shot candidacy to begin with, and to go down this way. Okay, well.
Very odd. Anyway, so let's go
Long Island.
from California, Colorado, New York. Now let's go to Pennsylvania. And this is from The Bulwark, and it's written by Jonathan V. Last, again, a conservative writer. And the title is Fettermania is Now. How Fetterman could win or lose in November. And, we'll get into the vote fraud problem that Republicans have for themselves and created for themselves on the Senate side.
Oh, yes, right.
In their primary. But on the Democratic primary, Fetterman stomped Conor Lamb. I don't think there's a better term for it. He just ran away with it.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so
Conor Lamb soft on
the
crime,
Bulwark is looking at this race and saying, well, here's the number one point here. Vote for the largest primate.
All right. Yes.
Look, I first started preaching, says Jonathan V. Last, to you about Fetterman in November. The guy is selling something very rare. His blowout victory over Conor Lamb looks inevitable now, but it's important to remember Conor Lamb is a quality candidate.
Yes.
Lamb isn't a tomato can. He's a good candidate who is perfectly aligned with Pennsylvania Democrats. He's got a great story. And Fetterman more than doubled him up, 59-27. So here's the deal. I'm not convinced Fetterman's a lock to win. If he faces Oz, he's got a great chance, better than 50-50. If he's facing McCormick, it's a tougher race. In a neutral environment, Fetterman beats either one of them. But November ain't going to be neutral. We'll be deep into recession, and Biden's approval numbers are still going to be underwater. So let's start with the bull case for Fetterman. And basically, first off, how are Republicans going to attack him? They're going to say he's soft on crime. That's tough. And explains why. The other obvious line, and we already explained that. The other obvious line of attack will be that Fetterman is a socialist, but that's going to be a hard sell too. He's pro-union. He's in favor of fracking. He stayed away from Green New Deal stuff. And having a millionaire carpetbagger making the socialist argument, doesn't matter which one of the others win, one of them is going to be a millionaire carpetbagger. True. Making the socialist argument risks highlighting to voters how much the Republican candidate is not like them. So, yeah, maybe crime is Fetterman's big vulnerability. He wants to legalize pot. And on the state pardon board, he tried to get as many people out of prison as he could. But, and you may see that ad about that a lot, but Fetterman's leaning in on it.
Yeah,
He said, we can't stop believing in second chances for everybody. That's why my role on the board of pardons is important to me. I'm proud of it, and I'm not running away from it. So that's what you do when you're a Democrat. Just because they attack you, you go, yeah. You're attacking my strength. Let me explain to you why it's a strength.
Yeah. Well, I can agree with that. I always thought that was a wise strategy in terms of dealing with anything.
Right. And then he mentions the jogger and says, and I struggle to say this politely, you think that incident's going to hurt him with rural Republicans?
Yeah. No. That's a weird one. Difficult to get
In order
past.
to attack Son Paul is soft on crime, the guy has to look soft. And Fetterman looks like a prison warden.
He does. That's a thing. It works. People used to vote for hair. It happens.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with our roundup. Greg Dworkin here filling us in on everything that happened. We left off in the middle of the Pennsylvania race. Giant
Fettermania.
John Fetterman. Yes.
WWE style. So Jonathan V. Last finishes talking about how he could win is by pointing out Oz and McCormick are awful. They're both carpetbaggers. They're both the products of elite institutions. Both are super rich. To the extent they run rings around Fetterman on the debate stage, they'll only highlight the fact that he's normal. He's like a normal dude, and they're polished commodities, and they're on the make. Fetterman's authentic, and authenticity is the most valuable commodity in politics right now.
Okay.
Sometimes it's money. I remember when Phil Graham was running for president. I got more money than anybody on the banking committee. Nobody can match me. Money, 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 money. Of course, he lost. Authenticity does, in fact, matter. Now, the bear case that they make is basically Republican voters.
Yeah.
Okay? Because, for example, rural white voters won't give Fetterman a chance. And Republicans are going to vote for Republicans regardless. And, of course, we don't know if they will, but that's the case. They may not like Mastriano. I'm not so sure he's going to win, but, will they ticket split?
Yeah.
Right, and that's really the question. So in that regard, there's a Republican consultant working on the Oz Super PAC named Mark David Harris.
Okay. What?
Okay.
Tom, Dick, and Harris?
Mark David Harris is
Mark
his name.
David
And he
Harris.
tweeted last night, Democrats can save me a lecture on Doug Mastriano being a threat to democracy when they spent millions to help him win the GOP primary. Doesn't sound to me like they believe he's a threat.
Uh-huh.
Right? And Blake Hounshell, reporter, retweets this with the comment, Republican consultant working on the Super PAC, a reminder folks might put on their team jerseys and support Mastriano, whatever their private reservations, or at least be anti-Mastriano. Right? If you're an anti-Trumper, I'm anti-you. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, and that's how Trump got elected, because remember, it's very difficult to convince a man of something when his salary depends upon him not being convinced.
Yes.
So Republicans will put on the GOP jersey and vote for Mastriano and hold their nose, which is awful. They shouldn't. Democrats don't do that. They say, no, I don't like him. I'm just not voting for him. And Republicans say, I hate him, but Democrats might win if we don't do this. So, unions and civil rights, I got to vote for this guy.
Yes.
So the point is that, how does that affect Fetterman? It's unclear. And it's also not so clear what kind of coattails Mastriano has. His lieutenant governor choice fell in the primary, and so did the person most closely aside with him in the Senate. That was the third person in the race, the crazy MAGA lady. She came in third. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's in the Republican primary. Does that translate to the general election? Nobody knows. So Fetterman has a pretty good chance of winning. Let's just put it that way. He's far from being a lock. Mastriano has a much higher hill to climb in order to win, but of course he could win. Nobody should tell you he can't. And it's all about who turns out, as always, and whether the base gets revved up. But Fetterman is the kind of candidate who can pull out, people who I'm voting for him because I like him.
Yeah, or he's gigantic.
I know who he is. Name recognition is not going to be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
His health is not going to be an issue. He's going to be fully recovered by the time that happens.
All right.
And, it's just going to be a very, very interesting race. And, if you're a Democrat, basically what you need to do is say, look, Mastriano is a stop the steal person. He's against democracy. He doesn't want your vote to count. And by the way, Republicans don't like feeding babies.
Yeah. That'll work. I hope.
Now, Jamie Dupre points out something I'm sure you covered. Over on his version of Twitter, last night's primaries have Donald Trump still fully engaged in his never-ending 2020 election fraud conspiracy theory. Trump tweeted, or the equivalent to tweeted, social truth, whatever it is.
Right.
Dr. Oz should declare victory. It makes it much harder for them to cheat with the ballots than they just happen to find, he tweeted. But it's not just him now. Of course, that's been picked up. This is Media Matters for America covering Fox News and the Fox Radio Network, Premier Radio Network, Sean Hannity show, which isn't Fox. Sean Hannity suggests election fraud in Pennsylvania primary. I don't trust people who have the ballots.
That's you.
Sean Hannity host. I think under every scenario I factored out, extrapolated out, Oz will be the winner in this race. And Oz thanks Hannity for advising him, by the way.
Okay.
Because it's nice to know that the people on Fox News are neutral. But God only knows when we're going to get that final call. And to be perfectly honest, I don't trust people. And I'm not talking about Republican candidates. I'm talking about the people that have the ballots.
Mm-hmm.
You can't trust Americans to vote. That's why we're taking the right away from you, in other words.
Right. It's all fraud. Good golly. Whenever we've been saying for a year now, and next time any of them lose, they'll just say, if I lose, it's fraud, and here they are.
Well, they have been saying that. What's interesting is that Mastriano would love to be saying that, but he can't because he won. So he can't attack the same election that he won with. And he's a stop the steal person. This is exactly the scenario that he's supposed, and of course his silence on it speaks volumes.
Does he have he probably was smart enough not to make a endorsement in the other race and say that he has a preferred candidate.
Well, the MAGA lady was really closely tied with him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So,
they're running together, So, it's just a weird scenario where
really
his voice is taken away by reality, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But again, he's hardly the favorite in his race for the governorship. It's just scary if he wins. Yeah. This is the New Yorker, John Cassidy. Trump brings his big lie playbook to the GOP primaries. Tuesday was a mixed bag for candidates endorsed by the former president, who's making fresh suggestions of election fraud. When Ronna McDaniel, McBean, McMuffin, what her name, Romney? The chair of the Republican National Committee appeared on Fox News on Wednesday. She was in a buoyant mood in the eagerly watched Pennsylvania contest. The Republicans had turned out about 100,000 more voters than the Democrats. Demonstrating, McDaniel said that the GOP was the party with the energy on the ground. Well, it's certainly the case that they had more interesting primaries. As she spoke, the Republican contest was still too close to call. The carpetbagger celebrity doctor from New Jersey, Mehmet Oz, who Trump had endorsed, was running narrowly ahead of David McCormick, a former Treasury official in George W. Bush administration who grew up in Pennsylvania but spent the last decade in Connecticut, getting rich helping to run one of the world's largest hedge funds, which I think is Bridgewater. McDaniel expressed confidence that either Republican would prevail in November, claiming the Democrats in choosing John Fetterman would be putting forward an unelectable left-winger. He'll do to Pennsylvania what Bill de Blasio did to New York City, San Francisco values, whatever.
Yeah, it's just
nonsense words thrown together. Only. The interviews also waited until the end of the interview to bring up the elephant in the room, Donald Trump. When they did, Bill Hemmer pointed out that the former president, in fact, had a mixed night. Ted Budd in GOP Senate primary in North Carolina won easily. Mastriano, far-right state senator, won easily. But Trump also backed some losers, including Madison Cawthorn. And whether McDaniel's math is accurate, Trump's endorsement boosted Oz this Tuesday, just that it aided J.D. Vance. But, it's really unclear because, this polling across the board, I don't have that in front of me, but I was looking at it from Fox News, basically saying like 30% said if Trump endorses them and you're a Republican, that means I'm voting for you. And about 30% said, well, it doesn't really make any difference. And about 25% said, well, actually, if you endorse them, that makes me less likely to vote for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I'll take 25% of the Republican Party any day because they are not a majority. And so if you take 25% away from what they have, that puts them behind the eight ball. And that's the situation Mastriano's in. But the point is,
he looks like a cue ball, not an
Trump inserted himself into Pennsylvania's vote count, posting on a social media site, Truth Social, here we go again, Pennsylvania, big mess, and then implied that Oz should just declare victory. And this inflammatory statement, like so many others, appeared to be baseless. With thousands of votes still to be counted, there's been no suggestion of any malfeasance. Our friend Adam Bonin, who's a Democratic lawyer and election expert, said it was baseless, was interviewed in the Washington Post for that. But, the people who don't know are the ones who talk, and that would be the Republican Party and Sean Hannity. But again, I repeat myself.
Right.
Trump, of course, was following his November 2020 playbook. And, if you were hoping that you could put 2020 behind us, not happening.
No time soon. As we know, we spent a good deal of yesterday on it, and now it's back, and it is the playbook. That's the playbook, how you run.
Doing it. And no, 2020 is going to matter. That's, again, why the January 6th committee hearings that'll take place on June 9th for the first time publicly, I think will be a big deal. This is Greg Sargent writing in the Washington Post. Say clearly, Republicans just nominated a pro-Trump insurrectionist. After Mastriano prevailed by double digits on Tuesday, news accounts noted Mastriano's key role in trying to overturn Trump's loss. He helped bus in Trump supporters. He attended the rally on January 6th. As state senator, he argued for the invalidation of Biden's electors, and he's continued falsely claiming election fraud ever since. So don't call him an election denier. He's an insurrectionist.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
right?
I'll agree
Mastriano's
with you,
running,
Greg
Sargent writes, on what is functionally an open vow to use the power of the governor's office to nullify future election losses, even if they're procedurally legitimate, and even if he knows this to be the case. Yeah. Right? And this becomes unavoidable once you look at his own conduct, and his Christian nationalist sympathies underscore the point.
Okay.
Right. He Mastriano adopted that the Pennsylvania legislature had sole authority to reappoint new electors, whatever the voters want.
Mm-hmm. Despite what the voters want, yeah.
So as governor, Mastriano would likely handpick a Secretary of State who'd resist certifying a razor-thin legitimate Democratic victory, and Mastriano would likely try to certify sham electors for Trump or another GOP candidate. And maybe the election in Pennsylvania might be close, maybe it won't. But let's be clear, he's telegraphing a willingness to attempt such a thing.
Yeah, it's the basis of his campaign.
Right? And so Mastriano hinted at this in his victory speech where he said, God is good. He uses people like you and me to change history. And his advisor said, 20 electors, baby.
Okay, sure. That's what God is. He's a member of the Electoral College.
Right. E.J. Dionne, writing in the Washington Post, Tuesday's primaries show that Trumpism has metastasized. So, the point of all of that is simply to say that the press is on it. They understand what's going on, and we'll see if they can keep their focus and keep talking about what matters. And if I were the Democrat again, I'd be defining this guy from day one, starting now.
Okay.
Mastriano is the guy that wants to get rid of democracy, make sure your vote doesn't count. And by the way, Republicans don't feed babies.
Right. Maybe bring up the example. By the way, the name of the guy out in Colorado doing this is Gary Lopez is his name, and you can find him on Twitter, Lopez for Colorado, CO. So yeah, why not tie him to Mastriano? They're running on a similar platform. If it turns out that when you've finished counting the votes, Republicans didn't win, then something's wrong. Either you counted wrong, or you don't know what votes are, or the rules need to be looked at. You got to squint just right so that rural votes count 5 times, and as I said, paste picante sauce hating city slicker votes count, well, your guess is probably as good as any other 3/5 of the time. And that's like their actual position. And I don't know, I guess the danger is that it's something people are constantly hinting that it's too crazy to be believed, but I don't know if that's the case. If 25% of Republicans believe it and say, yeah, we would rather lose or vote for the other guy than install one of these people, then you win in terms of the number of people who vote for you. And then it's a question of who wins the fight. The people who say you count by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until you get to the end, or the people who say, no, you just go 1, 2, 95 million, I win. I'm for the first group, but who knows? All right. Well, I like the rule of vote for the biggest primate. That does make things simple.
Yeah, it does.
So you just need a tape measure. Although, I mean, are we talking about like total body mass or just height?
Either way, he wins.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he makes it easy. But, when somebody invoked the Bill de Blasio name there, so now we have to maybe make the rule BMI versus just height. I guess. I don't know. And does it have to be a primate? I think so. To get on the ballot, probably? Anyway.
You see, that's why Democrats lose.
Yeah, we did.
Vote for the biggest guy, right? Don't nitpick it to death.
Yeah.
He's big.
You're sitting here trying to figure out policy. Oh, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Should it be 28 million for baby formula or 29? I don't know. How large is the person who says 28?
Well, I voted against 28 before I voted for 20. Oh, come on.
I don't know what to tell you. But okay, well, that's like a lot to digest.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So I'll leave you with one article here
Yes.
that I'm not going to cover, but I just want to bring it up because I want to make sure we don't forget about this. And it's a great piece by Ed Young from The Atlantic on the pandemic, what COVID hospitalization numbers are missing.
Yes.
As COVID numbers tick up, hospitals are supposed to be ready to jump in as needed, but they never had a reprieve. And the gist of the article, too long didn't read behind a paywall, is hospitals are in a constant state of crisis now because they just don't have time to recover.
They never did.
People still get sick. Doctors still get sick. They're still shockingly short-staffed. That hasn't gotten better. The pandemic's still ongoing.
Yeah.
They still have personnel that are out at various times, and sometimes key personnel at that, leadership, and nurses. But I repeat myself. And, it's important to remember that just because it's not in the news every day, this is an ongoing crisis, one of many ongoing crises.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot, and I'm still running into situations in everyday life where COVID is having that impact. I need to go and do something or make an appointment with some people to meet to take care of some business, and we can't do it here or there or the other place because half of their office is out with COVID. And, we've just gotten so used to it that it doesn't make news anymore. But the numbers continue to creep up, and and the anti-vax people continue to try to make hay of the idea that people who have been vaccinated are still able to contract COVID, even though it's now a variant and it's very much different perhaps from what they've been vaccinated against, and the vaccine efficacy wanes, but so do many vaccines. But they're still out there making hay on that score, and who knows? Well, I don't know if we're gonna end. I don't know if we're gonna have to wait until winter to see the next spike either. I don't know. We may have a late spring surprise coming as well. But maybe as the rest of the northern states get to start dining outside a little more often and having class outdoors, but the schools are dismissed, maybe we'll have a reprieve for the summer. I don't know.
Right. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been some monkeypox outbreaks.
Oh, yes. But I don't know what that is. I mean, it sounds bad.
In the UK, it's like smallpox.
Monkeys usually great. I love monkeys. Pox.
It's like smallpox, not so bad. And, the thing is that the smallpox vaccine, which a lot of us got because we're old enough, protects us.
Oh, well, good. But not monkeys.
As we, older primates, die out, and younger primates don't necessarily have that vaccine, they're susceptible. So you'll see outbreaks now and again.
Well,
and that's all I've got to say about
just
that
monkeys.
so far as come.
Well, okay. Vote. Vote for the larger primate. That rule works too. These these smaller ones have pox. I'm against that. Right. Even though that one guy said a pox on both your houses, I'm against that pox.
Yeah. So Kyle Griffin, who's an MSNBC producer, he does Eamon Modine's show. Tweets out, and I'm going to leave this as your parting remark for today from me.
Keep saying that.
May 19th, that's this morning.
Yeah.
Why did 192 Republicans vote against a $28 million emergency fund to address the baby formula shortage? That's it. That's the entire thread.
Oh, that's a long thread.
It's a long thread, but you should be adding that to every comment you make about Republicans.
Pretty much. You might. Yeah, honestly, I'd take that screen grab and just tweet it in response to any Republican that says anything today. I guess except the 12 that voted for it, although maybe even them too. Why not? You belong to this party, and I can't figure out why. I like that.
And then the other vote
12.
was voting against allowing families to pay for baby formula with WIC. And that was Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Louis Gohmert, Lauren Boebert, Paul Gosar, Thomas Massey, Andy Biggs, Clay Higgins, and Chip Roy, the Dirty Nine. And I love the way that you say Marjorie Taylor Greene so fluidly that it's like incorporated into her name.
Yeah, I accidentally say it sometimes when I'm not meaning to.
Well, I'm sorry, that's her name.
Yeah, it is, and everyone should
do
that.
No, it's her name.
Honestly, keep going with it. And, by the way, I haven't mentioned today that Buffalo is Tucker Carlson's fault. And you should say it every day and believe it. Because it's true, and he's just going to go on TV and double, triple, quadruple down on this thing. So you might as well just hang it around his neck. But all true, and I don't know. What else? All right.
Well, it's interesting. The what else is
that does it.
Tish James from New York is considering using a Sandy Hook model
okay.
and suing social media on the basis of allowing this Buffalo thing to happen.
Was that utilized earlier?
Well, Sandy Hook sued the manufacturers of the guns.
Okay. All
right. So the point is you can use this theory of the law, if you will, theory of the case, to say there are various and sundry situations where maybe you can put the enablers on trial. It's going to be hard to do with Tucker Carlson because of First Amendment issues. Yes. But what about, not policing, not taking down videos, not, and an otherwise enabling. And before Sandy Hook successfully sued Remington, people said, well, you can't do that. Well, actually, you can.
That's That's true. I mean, there's always that, and I don't want to discourage.
You can not only do it, you could win.
Attempting to do that. Although
same thing with Alex Jones.
Yes.
You can do it, and you can win, and that's what I mean about the Sandy Hook model. So she said she didn't say she's doing anything. She says she's looking into it.
Okay. I mean, I sometimes wish, why not this sort of energy and innovation in chasing down Donald Trump? We do it in a very traditional way, and it doesn't seem to be working all that well. But, what can you do? You're the Attorney General of New York. You're going to have to walk and chew gum same time. If you come up with an innovative method by which to attack another societal ill, I can't tell you not to spend time and energy on it. And especially, you make an excellent point twice in similar situations where people have said, yeah, it's a terrible social ill, but there's nothing we can really do about it. That doesn't work. Republicans are inventing legal theories and getting them adopted to the detriment of the rest of us all the time. And there's no reason why your inventive theory shouldn't be able to prevail too. So, okay, you're right. Good point. And you keep saying you're not a lawyer. Pretty good, I think. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know anything about procedure.
All right. Well, none of us do. But
I'm just here to ask questions.
A little bit, but yeah. But you know what?
You're responsible for answering them. If you don't like the answers, yell at David.
Right. You won't like some of the answers, and some of the procedural answers are dumb. I'm the one who stands here and says, yes, it would make a great campaign commercial to air the footage from C-SPAN of Republicans voting against baby formula. But the thing is, you see, you can't, because floor footage is not usable in campaign advertising. I'm sure there's a loophole somewhere, and maybe a third party could do it, but maybe candidates can't. I don't know. But
you're not allowed to use a screenshot?
I don't know how they would feel about just the screenshot. I think actual footage presents a problem, but
yeah, you wouldn't use actual footage.
But
you would just use that screenshot that everybody's circulating on Twitter.
Right. Look what I found on Twitter. Oh, it came from C-SPAN, but I didn't use C-SPAN footage. Well, who knows? And also, don't forget the new reality. Oh, you can't do that? Either I wish I had known that, or sure you can. Why not? And I just start teaching kids in law school that you can do that until there's enough of them on the Supreme Court to reverse the finding against them. So,
well, the other way is you don't use the screenshot. You simply find headlines in the news. That's a classic campaign hit.
Oh, yes.
You have
that's
those headlines in the background while you have the guy's a shocked face in the front. For some reason,
they sort of spin onto not the old movie ones from like Batman where they actually whirled a newspaper that would then stop. But they do come in from different angles. There's a lot of movement. It's very exciting, very dynamic campaign style. And also, yeah, right. We have that. Exactly.
There you go.
Perfect. And so you could try that. Also, I guess I'll just throw out there, also Republican style. The truth is that you can't use that footage in the campaign ads. But remember what that actually means. That means after you've won the election, the FEC will say, technical violation. And then they'll deadlock on the vote because the board is evenly divided, and then you won't get fined. If you're a Republican, that's the way it goes. If you're a Democrat, I guess you fret about obeying the rules. You frame
the sternly worded letter in your office.
Right. So, I mean, don't forget that you could run that ad, because I know I say you can't. No, you can. Someone will just try to call you out on it. And then if you laugh in their face and don't do anything, then you'll say, well, it was technically a violation, but no one can bring me in for anything, so why not just win the election and then go, yeah, a rule was broken. Kiss my ass. Try that. That's an approach. It's not a democratic approach typically, but if you win, everyone will cheer for you. You'll be able to point to large primates. You'll do things maybe. And then 2 years later, when the FEC case is dismissed, as was recently the case for Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz just broke all the rules about reimbursing himself for loans to his campaign, and he got the courts stacked with Republicans who were willing to say, that's a stupid rule. Let's not enforce it against Ted Cruz. So give the Ted Cruz plan a try. Run the ad. That's the new me saying, forget about the fact that you're not supposed to use that. Go ahead and do it. Or the worst they can do is come up with a judgment against you. But one of the things they won't do, no judge will do, is throw you out of office and reverse the election on those grounds. They never seem to do that. So go ahead, go for it, break the rules. That's the new policy. All right, thanks, Greg. You know what? Why don't you stay here and do the second hour? How about that? That would break the rules.
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, see, I can't make you do it. That's the important part, right? I can't compel you to it. Everyone knows it's a great idea, but I just can't make it happen. But thank you for the hour today and for watching the news yesterday while I fell asleep in a chair in front of the television.
Yeah, and for those of you playing along at home with your home version of Kagro in the Morning, remember, I talk a lot so David has a chance to eat breakfast. That's
right. And nutrition is important. Don't skip breakfast. The breakfast industry says it's the most important meal of the day. I learned that. That's where that came from. Of course.
Of course.
Right. So no surprise to anyone on that front. But, yeah. Well, thanks. And, I just had an idea about, what we were going to do to carry on for the rest of the hour. And then you made that joke and I forgot it.
Well, it's the end of the hour.
Yeah, right. Not your problem. Okay. Well, thanks very much again, Greg. And, yes, now I remember I was going to say, as we prepare for your exit, there's many other people to thank. I've been looking at this card for a couple of days now where I've written down the names. I have here in my hand a list of names, but of people who have done good things. And that is specifically boosted their support for the Kagro in the Morning show via Patreon in the last couple of days. A lot of familiar names here, too, by the way. Lisa Iannucci, who we hear from time to time via Twitter, and that's always a good thing. Nick Laughlin and Mike D. We'll just go with Mike D. That's a cool sort of nickname thing. And Gary Oliver, all of whom in the last, let's say 3 to 4 weeks, I guess, in Lisa's case, and in the last couple of days for Nick, Mike, and Gary. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And Greg, thanks a lot for coming in. It's Thursday now, so we get Friday and then the weekend off. We'll hear from you again on Monday, and much sooner than that on Twitter. We'll be back in 1 minute. You haven't seen The Last of Us. Well, you have because we're not on TV. You haven't heard The Last of Us because radio. But please stay tuned for us to annoy you for another hour. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. I am looking to see if I can find a print version of the story that Travis sent me from Colorado about Gary Lopez and his plan, but it's not getting much written attention. But there's a video segment, but it's 2.5 minutes long. I'll have to just summarize it because I don't think they'll want me to play the whole segment, but it's really quite amazing. But I'll include it in the roundup so everyone can watch the segment on their own. But how come you'd think this would be getting more attention? But it's the story of our lives here in the United States. Somebody pulls something so ridiculous, and there's no attention paid to it in written form. But Kyle Clark. Travis sends me the clip here. Who's Kyle Clark? Well, I'll open up the thing and we'll take a look and read his bio. Kyle Clark. He's a dad and a husband. So there you go. I mean, there's more to it, but as you know, you put that first in your profile. That's the most important things, right? So that is an interesting phenomenon, just sort of psychologically. Everyone thinks that that's very important to, not everyone thinks it's that important to include. It does betray a certain way of thinking, I suppose. I mean, I'm a dad and a husband, and it's nowhere in my profile. And people will then say, well, you're anti-family. Well, how could I be? I've got one. What are you talking about? But I didn't put it in here. I didn't put an American flag in anything. It's like it's the lapel, American flag lapel pin of Twitter biography entries. But okay, he's the important part for you in terms of why should I listen to Kyle Clark? What does he know? If the blue check mark doesn't convince you, It won't be dad and husband that does it, but journalist, well, that might. Let's see. He, I guess, hosts a show on, I guess, local Colorado, statewide, I don't know, TV. Next with Kyle Clark. Okay, I mean, that's logically named. I can't argue with it. And let's see. Next on 9 News. So that's his show. Next on 9 News. That's the show Twitter feed. I think you get the point now. Okay, so what's he doing? What's he up to? He's reported this story. Coloradans have elected just one Republican governor in the last 50 years. That's good for you, Coloradans. Well done. But Gary Lopez here, who tweets also as Lopez for Colorado, is a current Republican candidate for governor, and I guess he's just one of a few, if not several. But he has an idea that could change that. That is to say that they've only elected one Republican governor in the last 50 years. And the answer is stop counting each vote equally. And the video, I mean, it's very well done TV show. And so, you know, it's very pleasant and a good watch. And it goes for 2 minutes and 19 seconds. So it's not hard to get through. But I don't want to steal his material outright and just play it on the air. And also just not say anything for 2 minutes. But he essentially comes up with the scheme of doing an electoral college type vote by, I guess, divided up by county, I suppose. And his basis for it, this is interesting too, right? So if you did it by electoral vote, it'd be they analyze his version, and it does indeed show that, say, in the last gubernatorial election, where Jared Polis won by, I think, something like almost 10 points, maybe even more, would in fact have come out as a blowout for the Republicans, a huge win for Republicans. But his version of it, it's not just let's do electoral college by county. It's let's do electoral college by county wherein the number of electoral votes is not tied to population, but to voter turnout. The counties with the highest percentage turnout get the most electoral votes because, as he says, you want to encourage voter turnout. And I do want to encourage voter turnout. But at any rate, I mean, that's just not what we base anything on. And that's just, I don't know what to tell you. That's just dumb. But it does happen to work out for him and Republicans. They would win the governor's race many times because these rural counties, as they illustrate in the thing, there's 2 or 3 of the smallest counties population-wise in Colorado where there's a combined, 2,000 voters, and they would get like 33 of these electoral votes based on this formula that he's proposing. So it's completely upside down and backwards and weights the votes of rural voters enormously. And we already do that. Oh, you see what a disaster it is with the Electoral College. I've not run into any serious candidates anywhere. And I mean, maybe he's not a serious candidate. I've not run into any serious candidates anywhere that suggest that a great idea would be to impose on the states essentially the same mistake we've made with the Electoral College nationally. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I'll include the video in the roundup so that you can get a coherent rundown of what's going on. But just another cheat code come up with by Republicans. And, I mean, by the same token, that can't be done. That's not the way it works. We can't do that. Well, if you rig it up and try it and pass it in the legislature and get the Supreme Courts packed with your judges, I guess you could do it. I mean, I guess if you change it in the legislature, that would be enough. You don't really need to pack the courts in order to do it. Anyway, whatever. By the way, speaking of Aaron Schock, Mighty OCD sends us a photo forwards the tweet of Aaron Schock living his best life. Is that a current tweet? Yeah, from May 19th. That's today. So the tweet is, I wonder how that even came up. But let's see. Who's tweeting this? Mr. Geezy, Geezy, tweeting, Aaron Schock is living his best life. That's from today, and it features a screen grab from Aaron Schock's, Instagram account. And here he is modeling a sort of magenta attire outside of a private jet, hanging out with another guy dressed all in black, and I guess claiming to be in Saint-Tropez. And, well, there's just no stopping these guys. You get embarrassed at a public office, just go run around flying to exotic locales on private jets in fashion ensembles. And I don't know. I don't know where his money comes from. I don't know where it was coming from before. I'm sure we knew at the time when he was elected. Where, like, does he have family money? Who cares? I guess he can go do what he wants to for now. All right, back to reality. We'll check in on a couple of other stories. Let me jump over to Pocket, the usual go-to on these things. Too bad I couldn't find a write-up on the Gary Lopez thing, but I appreciate the story. Always worth having. Dang, let's see what I've got. I've parked far away from Pocket. It's a little bit of a walk back to get there. All right, let's see. Oh, how about some follow-up Idaho news? Because why not? The Hill decided to focus on Idaho a little bit more and drill down a little bit into the results of yesterday's voting. We did find out that really high-level lunatic Janice McGeehan did not win her bid to unseat the incumbent governor in the primary. But I guess she won't be back as lieutenant governor, which is a good thing. But apparently that didn't stop the crazy in Idaho. They could only focus on stopping one lunatic, and then all the other lunatics, maybe that was the plan, slipped through the gap while everybody was busy stopping McGeehan. Conservative earthquake rocks Idaho, says the Hill's Reed Wilson, or at least he's the author of the article that follows that headline. Someone else may have said those words. An editor put this in there. Idaho Governor Brad Little won the Republican Party's nomination for a second term on Tuesday, easily outpacing a conservative challenger, if you want to call her that, who had former President Trump's support. But Little's allies in the state legislature were far less fortunate, as a conservative wave fueled by anger at the outcome of the 2020 elections, which, remember, Trump won in Idaho, but they're very angry about that, apparently, and Little's own effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic crashed over what is already one of the most ruby-red states in America. So, in other words, they had pretty good results, at least for a while, trying to tamp down on the spread of coronavirus, and their preferred candidate overwhelmingly won their election there and was certified, and they counted those electoral votes for Trump from Idaho in Congress. Everything went as it's supposed to, and so they're furious. We're less sick, and fewer of us are going to the hospital, and our election worked the way it was supposed to. Let's put a stop to that, say Idaho Republicans. What happened? 20 incumbent state legislators either lost their seats or lost races to move from the House to the Senate on Tuesday. Among them, well, if we're going to try and pronounce their names and where they're from, sure, why not? Senator Carl Crabtree, chairman of the Senate Education Committee. Got to throw him out because of all the furry kids who are using litter boxes in the bathrooms falsely. All right, what else? Chairman of the, skipped his name. State Senator Jeff Agenbrod, chairman of the powerful Senate Finance Committee. State Senator Jim Patrick, chair of the Senate Commerce Committee. State Senator Fred Martin, also so far pretty easy to pronounce their names anyway, chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee. And State Senator Peter Riggs, Martin's vice chairman and son of the former Lieutenant Governor Jack Riggs. So really a sort of an anti-establishment wave, I would guess. Or maybe they were just voting for larger primates. Not sure. None of the five would pass as moderate in almost any other state, but all five lost to challengers who painted them as roadblocks to conservative progress. keeping in mind, of course, that conservative progress in Idaho is letting roads revert to gravel. In recent years, Idaho's state house has been the bastion of arch conservatives who have passed new restrictions on abortion, transgender rights, and critical race theory, even though probably by most measures there's very little of that going on in Idaho. But okay, some, but not all, of those policies have met procedural deaths in the state Senate, which has been run by what passes in Idaho for more mainstream Republicanism. The House is the branch that has really generated the outrageous bills, said David Adler, a longtime Idaho political activist, or rather analyst, not to say that the Senate is particularly moderate, it's just less far right. Tuesday's results were not a complete victory for conservatives. Well, I would say they're not a victory for conservatives at all. They're a victory for ultra-radical right-wing lunatics. I mean, conservatives are the people who lost. Anyway, as several of the most conservative members of the state house went down to defeat. So not a complete victory. They lost some too. At least 6 members of the state house lost renomination bids, and 2 others are trailing as late ballots remain to be tallied. Again, what's happening here is probably anti-establishment. And in a way, it's kind of funny. And Democrats occasionally see a similar thing happening on their side. Once you hit on the formula that's working with Republican voters, like being anti-establishment and super radical, right? A lot of these people, a lot of these members who lost, I would bet that if you could go, if their original opponents that they defeated were still around, I'll bet you'd find that a large number of the people who were just defeated were swept into office originally, maybe even in Republican primaries, by insisting that the then current incumbent, was a fossil, a dinosaur, not conservative enough, not part of the new breed of conservatives who, take action, bold action, and why these people are just a bunch of dusty old losers who run ranches and just want to keep taxes low. When sure, I run a ranch and want to keep taxes low too, but I also want everybody to know that in New York City, somebody had an abortion, and we got to do something about it here in Idaho. And they're putting cat boxes into the earlier version of that. And now they're just being swept out by the new version of whatever works today. And I mentioned, Democrats sometimes do the same thing. I think, for instance, there's been the dynamic. It's gone on forever. It's a repeating cycle, right? But in your lifetimes, we're talking about the Howard Dean fans who wanted to reform the Democratic Party more than anything. We got to have a 50-state strategy. Oh, good stuff. I mean, I support all of that. It's a great idea. But sweeping out establishment Democrats at the time. Or, Howard Dean himself not succeeding in doing it. But then people saying, we got to take over our local Democratic apparatus and sweep out the old and bring in the new 50-state strategy. We got to be aggressive. We got to fight everywhere. We can't be passive. We can't constantly cave to right-wing framing. And sweeping out traditional, or the Democrats who had been occupying those offices at the time. And then not that far after that, a new wave of, people who entered, Bernie Sanders supporters, Democratic Socialists of America, people inspired by or supporting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those people, but they very quickly realized, that's a formula that works. All right, well, we got to sweep out these fossils that have been occupying these offices for about 10 minutes. The Howard Dean people, oh my God, ancient history. Out, and and eventually, it's just one of those things. If the revolutionary rhetoric works, then you're subject to being swept out later, and that's fine. That's competitive politics. It's the way it works. I'm happy enough with it on the Democratic side because so far we haven't produced anything like the lunacy that the Republicans have produced. Unfortunately, what works on the Republican side is, these ossified fossils just want to put babies in cages. We want to starve them to death. And if that's the thing that you're going to ride into office, That's a little bit disturbing because it's bad. And it's very different from what's happening on the Democratic side. But that's what actually works, right? Well, we got to build a wall and turn them back at the border. Well, no, you're an old man. We got to put them in cages. That'll teach them the real lesson. Yeah. We got to do that. Oh, yeah, well, I want to starve them to death. Oh, we want that. And then the people who just won office on let's starve them to death will eventually, of course, be swept out by the people who say we should roast them with flamethrowers. Okay, yeah, we should do that. We should put them in wood chippers. Yeah, you bet. We got to have some of that. And I guess with any luck, none of them will be around long enough to become effective. And though they will have made these fiery speeches, they'll forget to pass the legislation maybe when they get into office. But so far, the staff has been around and has been dedicated to try to turn it into legislation. So we haven't lucked out in that respect. So it's still pretty dangerous. So where were we with this? Tuesday's results not being a complete victory for conservatives because some of them got swept out as well by the next wave of revolutionary rhetoric. But conservatives declared victory. So there's always that. That's the Trump plan. Early Wednesday morning, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, a powerful force in conservative politics in the Gem State, tweeted, "Conservatives are having a solid night, especially in the Idaho Senate. Conservatives who have been frustrated by roadblocks took their revenge, and while Little won the right to run for a second term, Attorney General Lawrence Wasden, a 5-term incumbent and the longest-serving statewide elected official in Idaho, did not. People are frustrated with what happened over the last 2 years, whatever that was, and they're frustrated with the fact that our Attorney General gave bad advice to the governor and told him that he could keep extending these emergency orders," said former Representative Raul Labrador, remember him, who defeated Wasden by a wide margin. They took it out on the legislators who were maybe sitting on the sidelines. So that's it. Raul Labrador back in politics, I guess, now to stand for Attorney General on the platform that Idaho, of all places, was too tough on the pandemic. Labrador, a founding member of the House Freedom Caucus, who once challenged Kevin McCarthy for the position of House Majority Whip, was among the Idaho Republicans who questioned the validity of the 2020 elections. He said he would have joined a lawsuit brought by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton that sought to overturn election results in 6 battleground states. Wasden was among the few Republican attorneys general who did not join Paxton's suit. And kudos to the writer here for saying attorneys general. Correct. Well done. I think was a huge factor in Wasden's loss, Labrador said of the Texas suit in an interview Wednesday. He didn't join it because he had given legal advice to our governor that he could change the election rules throughout the pandemic. The results will not shake the GOP's control of the Idaho state government. The state has not elected a Democratic governor since Cecil Andrus won re-election in 1990, and Republicans control 28 of 35 seats in the state Senate and 58 of 70 in the state House. But the realignment is likely to put a once traditionally conservative state on the new vanguard of the far right. Maybe to go down in flames a la California one day. You're going to have a Senate that is going to stand up to the governor. You have a House that's going to continue to stand up to the governor, Labrador said. There's supposed to be a check and balance on each other, and the reality is the legislature was not being a strong check on the executive. Gee whiz. I guess his own lieutenant governor was the one being a check on him. So, interesting times in Idaho. Good time for Joan to be out of there, and I imagine, as sad as that can be, there was probably a sigh of relief as well. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting story. Idaho's crazy. We should look out for them. All right. Other stories to share with you that make a certain amount of sense. Let's see. I felt like there were some other things here. Have I clicked over? No, this is the list. I thought I might have clicked over to the archives, but all right. Well, let's see. We've got that and things from the Twitter feed. But I mentioned to you the other day, and maybe now was a good time to read through the details of the story of what's her name? Tina Peters, the Mesa County, Colorado clerk, who ended up getting herself barred by the judges from administering overseeing the 2022 elections. You'll be shocked and surprised to learn then that the headline in the Washington Post from the other day reads, Judge bars indicted official Tina Peters from overseeing the 2022 elections. Timothy Bella and Emma Brown wrote this way back on May 11th. Remember how that was ancient history a few minutes ago on the show? A Colorado judge on Tuesday ruled that Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, a supporter of the former President Donald Trump, who has embraced election fraud conspiracy theories and actually acted on them and broken into places in pursuit of these theories, is barred from overseeing elections in her home county because of her indictment for allegedly tampering with voting equipment. So, good model to follow. You got to be looking in other places to indict people for tampering with voting equipment and pushing them out. Peters, who's running for the GOP nomination for Secretary of State in Colorado, has already been prohibited by a judge from overseeing last year's local elections. Mesa County District Judge Valerie Robeson, is it perhaps? There's no N. It's not Robinson. Robeson ruled on a lawsuit brought this year by Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold that called for Peters and Deputy Belinda Knisley to be barred from overseeing this year's midterm elections and the upcoming Mesa County primary. The embattled clerk is facing multiple investigations and 10 felony and misdemeanor counts from a grand jury indictment stemming from allegations of election equipment security breach and campaign finance violations. Knisley was also indicted by the grand jury and suspended from her county position last year. So once again, the theory here is, as we learned, there's virtually no chance of electing a Republican governor of Colorado anytime soon without changing the rules. So Gary Lopez says, let's change the rules. Therefore, very little hope for Tina Peters of being pardoned for her election crimes. So the only avenue available to her is to run for Secretary of State and then direct the attorneys of the Secretary of State's office to drop the charges against her and her friend so that she can finally get off the hook for having broken in to the storage facility and into the vote tabulating machines under cover of investigating electoral fraud that didn't happen, and who knows what she was hoping to do or what was possible, what became possible once she had broken in and started tampering with the voting machines. I guess that's the Republican path here. Like, let's claim that there was fraud. I can't prove the fraud. All right, well, how about if I break in and manipulate the machines such that they then purport to produce evidence of fraud? And if it doesn't work, or I get caught and I get indicted for doing that stuff, I'll run for whatever office it is that can make that go away. That's the plan. Based on the circumstances of this case, the court determines that the petitioners have met the burden of showing that Peters and Knisley have committed a neglect of duty and are unable to perform the duties of the Mesa County designated election official, Robeson wrote in her ruling. Another Peters deputy named in the lawsuit, Julie Fisher, is also barred from overseeing this year's elections. So who's doing it? Robeson appointed Brandy Bantz, the county elections director, to oversee this year's elections in Mesa County because she is, quote, clearly more qualified than Fisher, the order says. Griswold, who is running for re-election in November. What? Who's Griswold? Griswold is the current Democratic state Secretary of State. Griswold is running for re-election in November, and she said in a written statement that Robeson's ruling bars Peters from further threatening the integrity of Mesa's elections and ensures Mesa County residents have the secure and accessible elections they deserve. Clerk Peters' actions compromised Mesa County's voting equipment and election security, constituting one of the nation's first insider threats, where an election official risked the integrity of the election system in an effort to prove unfounded conspiracy theories, Griswold said. Clerk Peters subsequently refused to affirm that she would comply with Colorado elections rules and laws as the Mesa County DEO. Peters told the Washington Post that Griswold was engaging in political theater. Colorado voters, she said in a statement, deserve more truth, more transparency from their Secretary of State, and that's why I'm running to replace the Democrat. Except you'd be bringing us, of course, the very opposite, but, whatever. Claim victory. That's the usual MO here. R. Scott Reich, Knisely's attorney, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Peters, 66, became a hero to election deniers nationwide for embracing baseless conspiracy theories of election fraud pushed by Trump and his supporters. A grand jury in the county accused Peters in March of secretly copying hard drives from Dominion voting systems equipment. You remember that whole story, the background thing? Well, this is how you have to deal with them. But then they can just stand for election. That's no help. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. And let's see, I think we're just about done with that Washington Post piece. I can't recall whether there's anything else that we really need to distill out of it, and we're kind of close to the end, although let's see. Maybe we'll finish it out because there wasn't that much more. Peters, I think we... you know what? We forgot this part here. We didn't finish this. We left off just after noting that the major crime that we're talking about here is Peters secretly copying the hard drives of Dominion voting systems equipment. According to an 18-page indictment, Peters allegedly sneaked someone who was not a county employee into secure areas of her office last May before and during a manual update of Dominion voting machines known as a trusted build. And, of course, because a non-authorized employee was brought in there, it's now no longer a trusted build, I guess. And they'll have to start all over again with new machines. She is accused of devising a scheme to allow that person to use a security badge assigned to another person. All the things that are supposed to stop these things, and I guess they worked, but, I guess that sort of brings me back to what we were talking about before, the weird idea of using for a campaign ad the footage from C-SPAN. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Well, what if you just did it? You're not allowed to bring somebody who's not authorized into this area, and we have ID badges that electronically control the access, and so that'll do it, right? Well, what if somebody just steals the badge and uses that to get in? Well, then we'll prosecute you, but how long will that take? Well, luckily this time we actually have something going on where a judge is willing to say, all right, well, if you got caught doing that, we can't allow you to administer the elections. But sometimes judges are not that aggressive. Well, innocent until proven guilty in this country, and she hasn't been convicted yet. But good for this judge to step in. I wonder whether they're going to take that on appeal somewhere. And imagine that. They could appeal that all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and win 6-3 on, well, you haven't been convicted yet. So until we finally convict you of tampering with the voting machines, and even after that, we could just say, well, it's not such a big deal anyway. But you can run these elections. We keep saying, oh, they're all running for these offices so that they can tamper with. Well, they're in these offices now and are tampering with things. And only in Colorado so far have I seen anybody say, yeah, by the way, But they're not throwing her out of office. They say the voters, for whatever reason, elected her. She's just not allowed to do the job. It doesn't say anything about her not getting paid for the job either, by the way. You can collect the pay, you just can't do the work. That leaves you free to spend the rest of your time pursuing election fraud conspiracy theories. Isn't that great? Well, anyway, Peters has been under investigation since August, when the data copied from Mesa County's machines showed up on an election conspiracy theory website shortly after the clerk appeared at a symposium held by MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, an election denier and conspiracy theorist. The Mesa County clerk was charged with 10 counts, including 7 felonies. Among the criminal counts are conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation and attempting to influence a public servant, stemming in part from Peters' alleged efforts to deceive state election officials. The indictment made Peters the first elections official to face criminal charges related to the conspiracy theories surrounding the 2020 election, according to experts. She is accused not of fixing the election, but of breaking the law as she sought to investigate whether someone else did. In other words, she's arrested under the Jim Trafficant violation. Oh, I wasn't breaking the law. I was operating a sting operation to catch someone else who I think is breaking the law. Yeah, but you broke the law to do it. Yeah, but it was a good thing I was trying to do. Yeah, but you're crazy, so you're actually under arrest. Knisley was charged with cyber crimes for activities related to the case. In her order on Tuesday, Robeson noted that Knisley facilitated the deactivation of the cameras for the secured area where the Mesa County election equipment was stored. I mean, this is an elaborate plot. They're not so completely crazy that they have no idea of what the realities are. If we're going to break in there, we're going to get caught on security cameras, or we can't get in there without an ID badge. It's all electronically controlled. Oh, well, we'll steal an ID badge and disable the cameras. They're trying. But I guess the good news is that the security measures are such that, yeah, we can catch you doing all of these things to defeat security measures. But I was trying to catch someone else. Whatever. You did it, and you're going to have to pay for it at some point. Where were we? Oh, yeah, so they're deactivating the cameras. Peters also allowed a, quote, consultant to enter the secured area with the election equipment and allowed the consultant to take an image of the equipment. Despite the allegations against her, Peters entered the race for Colorado Secretary of State in February, becoming another election official who has embraced conspiracy theories of election fraud to run for a top state election post. She received the most votes among GOP Secretary of State candidates in Colorado at the Republican State Assembly in April, securing a spot on the primary ballot with 60% of the delegates, according to Colorado Public Radio. Gessler, Peters' attorney, had filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit before the judge's order came down on Tuesday, so I guess that's not happening. Peters is scheduled to appear at a GOP forum, a GOP forum, Thursday night. But this would have been last Thursday night, I guess, with the other Republican candidates running for Secretary of State. The state's primary election, June 28th. So get out there, Coloradans. Tell your Republican friends to switch parties. But if they don't, put a stop to Tina Peters and her attempt to stage a coup via election, I guess, and declare all of her prior activity perfectly legal. It is very interesting to watch it happening here. The other day we started on the story from out of Georgia, and I don't think we got all the way through it, and I'm wondering whether we would be well served to take a second look at what was happening there. Georgia County under scrutiny after claim of post-election breach. And was that just an enormous story and that's why we didn't get through it? Or I can't recall exactly what we read about that one and what we didn't. Coffee County, rural area of Georgia. Coffee County, Georgia, in which the former elections supervisor told the Washington Post that she opened her offices to a businessman active in the election denier movement. So another, quote, consultant, I guess, brought into a restricted area to manipulate the voting equipment. So I'm going to refresh our memory on that one. Georgia County under scrutiny after claim of post-election breach May 13th, following the May 11th reporting on Tina Peters being barred from administering elections in Mesa County. Emma Brown, Amy Gardner reporting on this a couple of days ago for the Post. Let's see, I read you the introductory article telling you generally what was going on. Trump had carried the conservative county by 40 points, but elections supervisor Misty Hampton, remember, said she remained suspicious of Biden's win in Georgia on the whole. Hampton made a video that went viral soon after the election claiming to show that Dominion voting system machines, the ones used in her county, could be manipulated. It is interesting, though, how these elections officials have made the decision to buy and go ahead with using Dominion voting systems at some point. And then when when they lost the election, they accused them of fraud, but they, in fact, won the elections that they administered. And yet they're accusing them of fraud elsewhere anyway, so they broke into their own county's systems to do something. Yada, yada. We don't even know. Well, okay. In her interviews following her viral video, she said in her interviews that she hoped the Georgia businessman who visited later, Scott Hall, and others who accompanied him could help identify vulnerabilities and prove that this election was not done true and correct. I remember that odd construction of her statement. And, of course, it was, and so that's why they're having such enormous difficulty proving that it wasn't. Hampton said she could not remember when the visit occurred or what Hall and the others did while they were there. It's just your job to supervise these machines and make sure no one unauthorized gets their hands on them and does anything unauthorized to them. I can't remember when they came, and I don't know what they did. That sounds like you're not maintaining the chain of custody very well on these machines. She said that they did not enter a room that housed the county's touchscreen voting machines, but she said she did not know whether they entered the room housing the election management system server, the central computer used to tally election results, which sounds like they did. I'm not a babysitter, she told the Post, except you actually are. Your job is to make sure that those machines don't get tampered with by unauthorized personnel. I'm not a babysitter. Yes, you are. That's actually the job. Hall, who owns a bail bond business, did not respond to requests for comment. Voting experts said that whether they access sensitive areas or not, Hampton's actions underscore a growing risk to election security. In the year and a half since the 2020 election, there's been a steady drumbeat of revelations about alleged security breaches in local elections offices and growing concern among experts that officials who are sympathetic to claims of vote rigging might be persuaded to undermine election security in the name of protecting it. Insider threat, while always a part of the threat matrix, is now a reality in elections, said Matt Masterson, not Bat Masterson, the gunfighter, but Matt Masterson, who previously served as a senior U.S. cybersecurity official tracking 2020 election integrity for the Department of Homeland Security. Suspected or attempted breaches have spurred law enforcement investigations in Colorado. Everyone knows what county in Colorado, right? Mesa County. Michigan. And which one was that? The Antrim counties? Do I have that? I don't even know if I'm remembering the name correctly. And Ohio. That reminds me. Speaking of Ohio, the other day I erroneously said that Michael Steele had been the Secretary of State in Ohio for the 2004 elections, and I was reminded in email last night by our good friend John Ronald that I was thinking of, I was a little shaky on it at the time, and I think I made an attempt to look it up on Wikipedia and I sort of half read the thing. It wasn't Michael Steele, and of course I've made like the horrific mistake of mistaking one Republican black elected official for another, but it was Ken Blackwell was his name, and not Michael Steele. Michael Steele's from Maryland, and I'm not really sure why I didn't remember that at the time. Yeah, so pretty dumb, but it's been a while, and I should have just said, I can't remember who it was, but for whatever reason, Michael Steele's name came to mind, and he's become something of a never-Trumper, so that's not, doesn't fit. I don't know what Ken Blackwell is up to these days, but anyway, at least I have that correction on the record. Kind of an embarrassing mistake there, but thanks to John for pointing that out. All right, jumping back to Coffee County, Georgia. we were rounding up that this has happened in Colorado, Michigan, and Ohio, in addition to this now in Georgia. One such case has already led to criminal charges, the one we told you about a minute ago, Tina Peters, indicted in March. Details continue to emerge from other places where outsiders may have sought access to voting machines. In Michigan, state police are investigating an alleged breach of voting equipment after the 2020 election in Roscommon County. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right, but it's R-O-S and then Common. At any rate, a local NBC television affiliate in western Michigan reported last week that police had raided a township office in a different county as part of that investigation. Meanwhile, and I think we did hear a little bit about that. And was that the one where they had a team of alleged investigators going from county to county trying to get hold of the machines and knocking on doors and asking people how they voted? Meanwhile, some prominent election deniers have sought help from officials with access to protected voting systems, and others, including Peters in Colorado, are running to oversee elections as secretaries of state. Voting systems are considered by the federal government to be critical infrastructure. Vital to national security, and access to their software and other components is tightly regulated. In several instances since 2020, machines have been taken out of service after their chain of custody was interrupted. Hampton told the Post she was unaware of guidance the Georgia Secretaries of State office had sent to county election administrators, saying that voting equipment and software must not be released to the public absent a court order, and she questioned why access should be so restricted. What are you doing in this job again? Not really sure why you have this job, and how are you unaware of it? Again, I mean, when we say, what are you doing in this job implies that, you had one job. And you did, and you're not doing it, and maybe you need to be. She's out there probably chanting, lock her up, by the way. I don't see why anything that is dealing with elections is not open to the public, Hampton said. Why would you want to hide anything? It's an interesting construction. In the days after Biden's victory, officials in Coffee County, about 200 miles southeast of Atlanta, voiced suspicions of fraud, elections board's meeting minutes show. Hampton told them that rogue election officials could have flipped votes in other jurisdictions and that ballots could have been scanned and counted multiple times, according to the minutes. Could have been, but you have no evidence to show that they were. Is that right? Questions about Hampton's interactions with Hall surfaced only in recent months in a long-running federal lawsuit filed by the Coalition for Good Governance and others against the Georgia Secretary of State's office. The plaintiffs argue that the state's election system is so insecure that it violates the rights of voters. In a portion of a recorded phone call, a man identified in court papers as Hall claimed to have arranged for a plane to take people to Coffee County to copy data on voting equipment. Plaintiffs played the nearly 3-minute recording during depositions in February and March of two high-ranking deputies to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. They later filed the audio in court, and they have the audio here for you to listen to if you want to hear it. Raffensperger's office declined to comment for this report, citing the pending litigation and an ongoing investigation of the Coffee County matter. Attorneys for Raffensperger told the court last month that the Secretary of State's office launched the investigations as soon as it became aware of the recorded phone call. They said the state officials have not found evidence of a security breach. Hampton told the Post last week that no investigators have contacted her about Hall's claims. Marilyn Marks, executive director for the Coalition for Good Governance, told the Post that the recording captures part of a March 2021 telephone conversation that she had with Hall. She said that she had met Hall once in passing before he called her, and that she started recording the call after he said he had obtained confidential legal files related to her litigation. In the recording, the man identified as Hall told Marks that he arranged for a plane to ferry people to Coffee County and accompanied them as they went in there and imaged every hard drive of every piece of equipment and scanned ballots. We basically did the entire elections committee there, he added, and they said, we give you permission. Go for it. Well, that's not what Hampton said, is it? He said on the call that he had not received a report from the team about its findings. Ernestine Thomas Clark, who was chair of the 5-member county elections board and its lone Democrat around the time of the 2020 election, said that she was unaware of any effort to copy data from the machines and that no one had asked her permission to do so. I don't know anything about it. 3 other members of the board at the time did not respond to requests for comment. Hampton, who was hired by the board, said she was accompanied during Hall's visit by the 5th member, Eric Cheney, not Cheney, but Aney. Eric Cheney. Hampton, then known as Misty Martin, said she's got an alias. Well, okay, she probably got married. But all right, Hampton, then known as Misty Martin, said she sat with Hall and Cheney in a conference room after the outside team arrived to investigate, none of which was authorized, of course, by the way. She gave the Post what she said were text messages with Cheney in which she mentioned Hall. At 4:26 p.m. on January 6, 2021, as rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol, she texted Cheney that Hall was discussing the possibility of scanning our ballots from the general election, like we talked about the other day, according to the text messages. So that's kind of a clever diversion. While we were all watching the Capitol riot, people were letting other mysterious figures into local elections offices to image hard drives and make up BS about what happened in the election to justify maybe what was going on at the Capitol. The next day, and by the way, the January 6th committee should be looking into that as well, but probably won't get that far in next month's hearings. The next day, Cheney asked her to switch to Signal, the encrypted messaging app, according to the messages, so that you wouldn't be able to get this evidence later on. In an email county lawyers forwarded to the Post, Cheney wrote that he does not know Hall and was not present when anyone illegally accessed the server or the room in which it's contained. Responding later to inquiries about the text messages, he wrote, "I have no personal recollection of what you're asking." Coffee County Administrator Wesley Vickers declined to comment. Patrick Byrne, the former Overstock.com chief executive, who's played a central role in the election denier movement and has written about his own team's effort to find irregularities in Georgia and elsewhere, described Hall as a, quote, node in the network of people investigating the election during that time. Byrne said Hall told him that he and others had made a trip to Coffee County to try to get access to election equipment. Byrne said Hall told him he did not know whether they succeeded in obtaining sensitive data, such as a copy of the hard drive of the server. Nobody knows or recalls anything. In the audio recording, Hall described the people responsible for copying hard drives in Coffee County as the same people that went up to Michigan and did all that forensic stuff on the computers. Sounds like there are some people here who need to be locked up. In December 2020, plaintiffs in a lawsuit in Antrim County, Michigan, yes, we remembered it correctly, were permitted by a state judge to copy Dominion voting equipment. So that's interesting, too. Like in Mesa County and in Coffee County, they're warning everybody, don't let anybody in there unless they have a court order. Well, in Antrim, they're getting those court orders. Participants in that effort, including employees of the Atlanta-based data security firm Sullivan Strickler and former pro surfer Conan Hayes, pro surfers, we got everybody in this, who was then working with Byrne, either declined to comment or did not respond to a request for comment. Hampton said she resigned from her elections job under pressure in February of 2021. Thomas Clark, the elections board chair, said Hampton was accused of falsifying timesheets. Hampton said she followed election board guidance in her handling of those timesheets. She said she believed she was pushed out because she had made the video criticizing Dominion machines, which is good enough for a reason, really. Hampton's successor, James Barnes, emailed Raffensperger's office on May 9th, 2021, to say he had found a business card from Doug Logan of Cyber Ninjas at the base of Hampton's former computer. Great. The Florida-based firm by then had been selected to conduct a Republican-commissioned ballot review in Maricopa County, Arizona, as you well know. I think it might be prudent to see if there has been any contact between the person on the card and anyone in your office and or if they have had access to any of your equipment. Chris Harvey, who was then the state director of elections, replied to Barnes several days later in an email obtained through a public records request. Emails show that Harvey contacted the chief of the Secretary of State's Investigations Division, who directed one of her investigators, Pamela Jones, but not the old Pamela Jones, I don't think, to ask Coffee County officials whether cyber ninjas had accessed county voting equipment. There's places in the United States where cyber ninjas may have gotten their hands on the voting equipment and we don't know about it. God. Harvey, who left the Secretary of State offices 3 weeks later, said in an interview that he did not recall details of the events in question. Barnes, who is no longer employed by Coffee County, could not be reached. Jones did not respond to a request for comment. Hampton told the Post she believed that Logan... I've lost track of the roster here, just like you, believe me. Hampton told the Post that she believed that Logan had stopped by her office at some point. She said she could not recall the circumstances of his visit. Is Logan the surfer? I've lost track here at this point. No. Doug Logan from Cyber Ninjas. Okay. So Cyber Ninjas has been in Georgia, and no one knows why or when. Logan said in a podcast interview last year that after the 2020 election, he spent time in Georgia trying to get access to Dominion machines to investigate the election results. He indicated that he was not successful, but he may be lying about that. His spokesman did not respond to a request for comment about his interactions with Hampton. On June 8th, 2021, about a month after Barnes sent the email regarding Logan's business card, state officials replaced the server in Coffee County with a new server, according to computer records generated when the new server was installed. In response to a request from the federal judge for any documentation detailing the removal of the server, Raffensperger's office this week filed only those records in court. Attorneys for Raffensperger told the judge last month that the Secretary of State's office took possession of the old server because a former election official, whom they did not name, changed a password, making it impossible for others to get into the machine. Hampton told the Post she did not change any password, so she's denying that it was her. In a December hearing, long before the recorded phone call surfaced, investigators for the Secretary of State's office told the State Elections Board that they had found security problems in Hampton's office. They flagged the practice of leaving doors unlocked in the area that housed election equipment as a risk, according to a transcript of the hearing. And it is. Gee whiz. Thanks for flagging it. Hampton acknowledged to investigators and to the Post that the door often was unlocked. Coffee County attorneys in the hearing disputed that leaving it unlocked violated security regulations. I guess they have to say something like that, but that's kind of dumb. The investigators also flagged what they called the very misleading video that Hampton made, along with Cheney, according to investigators, about Dominion voting machines. In the video, the password for the Coffee County server was visible, written on a note attached to the computer monitor, a disclosure that was another security risk, you think? Investigators told the state board. Cheney did not respond to messages seeking comment about his role in creating the video, but that does make me wonder whether Hampton was in fact the one that changed the password, maybe out of an abundance of caution, or actually with her heart in the right place. Oops, I actually put the old password out in a viral video into the world. We'd better change it. But yet she denies doing it. She could simply say, yeah, I changed it, but I changed it because I accidentally, it would get her in trouble, but at least it would look like she was administering the office correctly. I found out that I may have breached security and given out the password, so I changed it. But now she continues to deny that she was the one that changed it. Okay. The state board referred the findings to Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr for potential civil penalties. A spokeswoman for Carr told the Post this week that the review remains active and ongoing. And we've reached the end of that lengthy piece about what's going on in Coffee County, Georgia. Gosh, there's a lot of this happening. It keeps happening all over the place, and we don't know why, but the same people who say that we need to look into these things by breaking the law in order to stop other people from breaking the law. My breaking the law is okay. I'm trying to break the law in order to keep them from breaking the law. And by the way, did you know that they were letting kids use cat litter boxes in all of the, it's real. I mean, you got to look out for that stuff. By the way, I guess I got to dig that up and share that with you. That was from this morning, I think Bangor, Maine was where this had resurfaced. This is going, again, on 3 months that they've been just recirculating the same rumor. And I'd love to know whether Chris Rufo is, in fact, in favor of continuing to do that. He probably thinks this is fantastic. But more disinformation for all of us to have to digest. All right, time to wrap things up. As you can tell from the music, we got Friday coming to us to bring in all the other stories that we didn't get to today. And, of course, next up right here on Netroots Radio is Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the object of which is to round up all of these other materials that we didn't get a chance to get to. I mean, that wasn't the original intent of them. It just happens to be the case because we obsess over minor details, and he gets back to, the stuff that really matters. And occasionally other details on things that we've already obsessed over. Like, for instance, but today, Mitch McConnell wrecked the Senate under Trump. We'll be investigating and hearing about how that was the case on the program coming up next. And then on the rest of the menu, 203 House Republicans voted against bolstering federal resources to prevent domestic terrorism in response to the racist mass shooting in Buffalo, New York. They weren't just hoping more babies would start, And then, of course, more from around the country and around the world. We'll hint at some of that next.
From netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Here's a big story, too. The Defense Department Inspector General has determined that Colonel Vindman and his brother both suffered swift and severe retaliation from Trump over their exposure of the Ukraine call. So, yes, absolutely exactly what we had accused the Trump administration of doing turns out to be true. What'll be done about it? We'll see.